Are you recording? Yes, I think you are recording. Let's just... Yes, okay. Whoa. What up, team? Lovely to have you aboard. Since you were last here, I've made a few changes to my little setup around here. Time for some B-roll. Okay, so now that you've had a little look around, let's crack on. Today I want to talk about imports in a modern style. Let me explain very quickly what I mean by this. In modern ES 2015, we have import thing from blah in some path. That's great, and actually you can ship that to a lot of modern browsers and they will resolve those imports at runtime. They'll request the file, it'll import, it'll do its job, and blah blah blah. What we've also got is we've got build tools that take those imports and flatten them down. The one that I tend to use for that is Rollup. Now what's cool about that is that you get potentially the best of both worlds, because what you can do is you can author using import statements and even dynamic import statements, and we'll come on to that as well in a little bit. But you can use a tool like Rollup to decide how to split the code. So what it'll do for you is it'll find the commonly used code in your application and it'll bundle those bits together. The phrase you might have heard is code splitting, and it does it for you automatically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the source code as we left it from last time, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just do a demonstration inside of this repo, which will be the basis of future work. What we're going to do is we're going to make a folder under the source. Now we've got the view and the test from last time, and if you can't remember that, link up there. This is a pocket money app that we're going to be making for my kids. Go and watch the video if you've not seen it. It also involves me trying to get a slightly bigger beard. It's a long story. What we're going to do is we're just going to set up an example just so that I can demonstrate the idea to you of what I'm actually talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in here and we're going to make a section called, I'm going to make one called utils. So this is going to be something that is probably shared between two sections of the app. Now I'm going to fake it for now and I'm just going to call this clamp.ts. So this is a function that I expect to be used in a bunch of places. So I'm just going to do export function clamp and I'm going to say value equals, no, I'm just going to say it's a number, and then I'm going to say min equals number dot negative infinity so that there's no min, and max equals number dot positive infinity. Now let me make this just a little bit bigger for you. That's quite big, Paul. Probably a little less big there, mate. All right. Let's wrap that around there. Okay. So we'll save that and just see what it's grumpy about. It's grumpy about a good number of things, apparently. What are you grumpy about here? Can't. Okay, well, I can and I will export that. Thank you very much. Not quite sure why it's upset. We will figure it out. So we will return math.max of min and then math.min of max and value. Okay, that seems good so far. So the issue with it not being happy with clamp so far, we'll just call it clamp 2. Oh, it seems happy with that. What's your problem, TypeScript? We'll just move that across so that the lint is happy. Doesn't like it if they're not aligned. Sure. Okay, so duplicate. Let's have a quick fix on that one. Peak problem? Yeah, we know. We know. I wonder if this is. I've no idea why it's upset. Okay. Joys of the edit. Let's jump to when I've actually figured out why. Alright, I have no idea, so we're going to reload the window and see what happens. Sometimes that's enough to cheer up TypeScript. And today it is enough to cheer it up. Yeah, 2019, solution to my problem? Switch it off and on again. Okay, so we've got this clamp function. Now, what else can we do? Let's imagine we have two sections in the Pocket Money app, section 1 and section 2. As I say, I'm doing this for illustrative purposes. When I've actually built out the app, there'll be various sections around it that we'll need to account for. So for now, we're just going to call this sections so that it's nice and neat and tidy. I'm just going to call this section 1.ts and section 2.ts. Now what they're both going to do is we're going to use the static import here to import the clamp function. So for example, I'm going to do import clamp from sections, section 1. And strangely, in TypeScript, you can import .js, and actually you kind of need to do that. Now, it's probably going to be a little bit upset with me here because, it's not from, dearie me, but it is from utils. Dearie me. I'm expecting it to be upset with me later on, though. But for now, okay, it's happy enough. Okay, so let's do an export default here for our section. And we will have a function in there called go, so like the init of a particular section. I'm going to say clamp, and let's do 1, 10, 20. So that should get clamped up to 10. And you're unhappy because trailing comma. Let's go fix that because I don't care about trailing commas. TSLint, let's do that here. Trailing comma, false. Don't care. All right, that was section, that should be section 2. So let's say const value equals that. I'm going to do console log your section 2, and we're going to say value. Okay, so the idea, I bet you don't like console logs either, do you? No console. Man, you are so picky. No console. I love consoles. Ha. So that's section 2, and you're unhappy because you're missing a semicolon. Okay, that one's reasonable. I'll take it. People who don't like semicolons, I'm sure you're deeply frustrated right now. Section 1 is going to be similar. Maybe we'll just do a different value there. Okay, so here's the idea. These two sections are independent of one another. You can imagine them being dynamically loaded, which we'll do in a moment. But each one wants to import this clamp functionality. So we want to share that between the two. But we want to author it like this with lots of imports and exports because it's very clean, it's very straightforward to understand, and it just helps us organize our code. Okay, so we're doing well so far. Let's add something at a bootstrap level. So we're just going to add, tell you what, a bootstrap here. All right, bootstrap.ts. Okay. Also, let's make ourselves an index.html for now as well, because we're going to need one of these. HTML, well, let's do that. That seems broadly fine. And we'll do script. We know we're going to be source equals bootstrap.js at the end of this. Okay, so that's that. In the bootstrap, what do we need to do? Well, I'll tell you what we'll do actually. In the index.html, let's add a couple of buttons. Button section 1, button section 2. Now this could ultimately, and will ultimately when I'm done, become a router to be able to dynamically load or switch between various sections. So I'm just doing this to kind of get the functionality in place, and I will replace it later. But for now, so that I can share this with you, let's keep going. Section 1, section 2. Okay, in the bootstrap, we're going to pick up those two elements, document.query selector, and we're going to say button 1 and button 2, const btn1 is that, const btn2 is that. Okay, when you click on button 1, and we're going to add an event listener for that, click. You're going to click it. What are we going to do? We are going to import, and this is the dynamic import now. So this, during the build phase, this won't get bundled in. This will become a dynamic import that will only be loaded at runtime. That's very exciting. Presumably you're unhappy because this could potentially be null, but I know it's not going to be, so I'm just going to pretend as though that's all okay. Kind of like that about TypeScript though, the fact that it goes, there is a possibility that this won't work out, and you go, oh yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, so button 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to say, I'd like you to go off and I'd like you to load sections, section 1, and let's make this async for now. And again, you're gonna, you know, if you did something like this, you've got to put in some code that's like, hey, if you click that button loads of times, don't do this loads of times, like maybe add a spinner or something if you absolutely have to. Again, just, I'm keeping it simple. The complexity always finds you, you know. Okay, so we're going to await the import of section 1. And that's going to give us back this default object, so we can then just do dot, then, and we'll do m, which is the module, m.default. And we can say const module equals that, and then we can say module dot go, because it knows that it's got a .go function on it, which is kind of cool. Now I am repeating myself, and in good code we don't repeat ourselves, but for now, again, this will do. And we're going to change that to a .js so that that works after we've done all this. Okay, so we've got the references to the buttons, we've got a click handler, and when you click it, we're going to go import it, and then we're going to tell the module to go, and that's all good. Now we actually have to talk about the build step part, which is probably the interesting part of all of this, at least as far as I'm concerned. And what we need is we need to start with rollup. What rollup's going to do is it's going to look through all the source, and it's going to find all the various imports, like these dynamic imports and the static imports, and it's going to figure out what to do. Really very clever. So let's start by doing an npm install, save it to dev, rollup, and rollup plugin TypeScript 2, because I'm using TypeScript here. So that's a good start. Let's go with that. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change over our package JSON so that the build isn't just going to run TypeScript, it's going to run rollup-c. That's fine. Failed to save because it's newer. Okay, fine. You win. You win this round. Fine. Package.json. And rollup-c, which means we need a rollup config in the root. Now, if you've never come across my rollup config video up there for you. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to import, and we're going to import TypeScript 2 from rollup plugin TypeScript 2. Great. And we're going to export default. This is going to give us the config that we can hand over to rollup. And the input, we give it an array because we want it to do code splitting, and that's just the way you trigger this. I'm going to say source bootstrap dot ts. The output, now I know what's coming next, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to say format AMD, and the reason we do AMD format is because one of the plugins that we're going to have to introduce in a moment requires AMD formatting, and we're going to say dir, and we want it to go to dist. All good so far. Let's also take a check in on our plugins, which we need to use here, and that's going to be TypeScript 2, like so. I'm just going to check my TS config, just make sure everything's set to ES next, which it is. So that all seems good because I don't want it to do anything like CommonJS at this exact moment in time. And now we should be able to build if all goes well. It might not do. These things sometimes break. Okay, that built. Yay! Great. Now let's see what we've got. Inside of our dist, we've got the bootstrap here. And we have this top level function define, which we're going to have to come back to. There's the code that we wrote for the bootstrap. And you can see that it's expanded this whole dynamic import over to this promise-based require function thing going on. What you can also see is you can see that we've got these hash named sections down here. So this is our section 1, this is our section 2. But interestingly, this second parameter is the same in both D481B7A3, again, D481B7A3, which is this chunk here. So what do we got here? We've got our clamp function in a file all by itself. Brilliant. That means it's shared between the two sections. Now, this is not going to work. Partly because there's no index in the dist, and partly because we don't have a server set up. So let me just chuck in those very quickly. Let's have a serve. So I normally do this. HTTP server -C0, which means don't cache. G, it means use gzip files if they're there, and I find that helpful sometimes. And I'd like you to set the dist folder. That's good. And I'd also like you to copy source index.html to dist. And again, I will be tidying some of this up, but this will just get us off the ground. So that should do that, which means our build in the dist should now come with an index.html, and we should be able to do npm run serve. Ahee, marvelous. Right, new tab. Wait, I made a mistake. Let's just try /dist for a second. npm run serve. No, it's serving that. Maybe I need to do this. Okay, cool. Let me do that. That. Okay, so I made a mistake. So what we're going to do is it's now serving dist, which means we can go over here, and you see we've got section 1 and section 2. Now, unfortunately for us, we also have reference error define is not defined. So many defines. And that is precisely what I was referring to earlier. If we go into the sources and look inside Bootstrap, you'll see define and then this whole thing here. And define is not defined. We need to fix that, and we can do that very quickly thanks to Surma. So what we'll do is we'll go back over here to our terminal, and we will make ourselves a new terminal real quick, and we'll do npm install, and we save it for dev, and it's not toll, it's roll up. There it is, roll up plugin. Loadzor, terrible name for a plugin. Terrible name. Anyway, carrying on. Right, we'll install that. Now what that does is, there it goes. What it does is it adds something to the top of our Bootstrap file. Let me go back to the roll up here, and I'm going to import Loadzor from rollup plugin Loadzor. And now, after calling the TypeScript compiler, we can say Loadzor. Okay, just like that. And then we'll do a build. And not a lot will appear to change, but we'll take a look inside the dist. And the dist, inside the Bootstrap, now has this chunk at the top. If the loader is already loaded, just stop. If not, self.define. Well, that's going to give us this chunk of code that's going to go in here. And it works just brilliantly. What it does is it's going to create a self.define that knows how to load our different sections. Let's go back over here, reload the page. Now then, cannot read property add event listener of null. Oh, I made a mistake. It's section 1 and section 2. Funnily enough, I did tell it that I was going to ignore that. We'll go with section 1. Some of you have been watching this whole time going, he's going to regret this. I just did. Let's do a build. And we're done. So we'll go back across over here. Got it this time. Section 1. Hey! And section 2. Way! And let's have a look in the network panel. You see what we get here right at the start. I'm just going to bring that down. There we go. You see, all we've done is we've loaded the Bootstrap.js, but not the individual sections. As we click on the individual sections, you can see that the section 1 gets loaded and the chunk, the clamp. So the first time we hit section 1, we load the clamp function as well. And then section 2, we just get section 2. We don't need to get the clamp because it's already in place. Best of both worlds. We've got static imports for the things that we need, and we've got the dynamic imports for the things that we want to load on the fly. This means that we can load a minimal Bootstrap for our app, and then we can load the individual sections on demand as we need to. So there you go. That's how I would do imports in a modern style. Static imports and dynamic imports combined using Rollup and something like Loadzor. Terrible plugin name, Surma. Anyway, still does amazing things, and I love it to bits. Check it out. Go and check out the source code. I'll link it below. You can see where I'm at with this source code. I'll tidy this up and probably push it up just so that there's a kind of more router-like version in the Pocket Money app. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, I used to say give it a thumbs up, but really, honestly, whatever you like, really. It is always lovely to have you aboard. Thank you for watching this far. If you have, comment below. Here's the question. How many bytes do you think the Bootstrap is after this build? The exact number of bytes. If you win it, I'll pin it. All right? Best guess wins. First one I see that is the correct number of bytes bytes, please. Not kilobytes, bytes. Bytes. Whatever. See ya.